Well, hello and welcome to the Corey Doctorow podcast. I'm a day late, unfortunately. That's just how it goes. I had a very busy day yesterday. So, as I mentioned last time, I'm a single dad this week. Alice is at South by Southwest, and it's just been me and the kid, and it's been really lovely. I mean, we've just been bonding like nobody's business. At the weekend, we went down to Speaker's Corner and played in the park. We got to see my favorite Speaker's Corner weirdo, which is the lady who wants to send everyone back to where they came from, and I always heckle her. I always stand beside her and shout, "That's right! Hominids aren't native to England. Send them back to Goanda land. England for the squirrels. Mammals aren't native to England. England for the invertebrates. God save the queen bee." And it's always very funny, and this was no exception because boy, she's just a crazy lady, and Posey thought it was really funny too. Um, I speak to you today sitting beside a stack of paper that's literally about half a foot high, 850, 870 sheets. This is the copy edited manuscript for my next novel, Makers, which is coming out in October 2009. Some of you read part of this syndicated on Salon under the title Theme Punks. By the time it was all said and done, it was a big fat book, and here it is before me. Um, Waiting to be copy edited or waiting to have the copy edits gone through and approved and sorted out. This is actually one of the big downsides of doing electronic editions of my books. Is the way that copy editing works, bizarrely enough, is the publisher actually takes the manuscript. I guess in the old days the writer would send the publisher the manuscript. I just email it to them. They print it out. They take that printed out manuscript and they send it somewhere in New York to some freelance copy editor who goes through it with a blue pencil and literally marks all the changes that need to be made. And they stick that whole thing in a FedEx envelope and they send it to me in London, and I bring to the office this mountain of paper and I go through it and I mark with a red pencil all the stuff that I don't want the copy editor changed that I want to change back. And as someone who needs to keep an electronic edition in sync with this, I then have to go through and edit the electronic edition at the same time. Now this is, I guess, good hygiene anyways, because it means that in 20, 30 years, if I'm not with my publisher anymore, I'll still have an authoritative edition of my book. Otherwise, you just have to go in and retype the manuscript that the publisher, or the printed book that the publisher produced, to have that definitive edition. But still, it's a lot of work to go through and note all those changes electronically. So after I'm done with that red pencil, I then take the whole thing and I FedEx that back to New York, and then they send that on to a typesetter. And really, we're moving around this huge lump of paper. And for me, all my manuscripts, after they get sent back to me here in London, they then get stuck back in an envelope and sent back by airmail to Toronto to the Merrill Collection, where they archive all of my papers. So that's the eventual trajectory of this giant wad of carbon. Um, you may be asking yourself, why don't they just use Word and track changes? And I guess it's because this system works. And I know that there were some publishers in the old days who tried using Word, and they got Word macroviruses and lost an entire season's production. And I think that would be enough to scare most publishers into just saying, all right, we're going to FedEx around big chunks of paper. Speaking of digital, though, this week Harvard Business Review published a short article of mine in their digital edition about IT and avid users in companies. It was kind of a little rant of mine about how IT always seems to be defending last year's technological system instead of allowing users to develop this year's one, and how that doesn't benefit users or IT, and how management can fix that. I'm on my way to California at the end of the week on Friday. We're flying to San Francisco just the day after Alice gets back from Texas. We go to San Francisco, where we're attending the Game Developers Conference, being met by my parents there, who are going to take care of the baby. Before you ask, no, I'm completely booked. No social time, no meeting time, no nothing. I already have all that stuff booked in. But one thing I am doing that I hope to see you at is a benefit for the Electronic Frontier Foundation with Rudy Rucker, Annalee Newitz, and Charlie Jane Anders from IO9, the science fiction site. We're doing that at the 111 Minna Gallery on the 23rd of March. I think it's 7 p.m. The details are on the EFF site and on Craphound. And I guess the only other news from this week is Little Brother news. There's a bunch of secret news I can't tell you about that's really exciting. Some further licensing of the work, and also an award that I'm nominated for, but that hasn't been announced. That I'm very happy about. And I hope I can tell you about next week. I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to bring the headset to California and try and record a podcast in San Francisco or take a week off. But some really good news that I can't tell you about, and some great news that I can tell you about. The good news that I can tell you about is Little Brother has been bought in Brazil and will be published there in Portuguese. And that although I'm not going to be able to attend the Nebula banquet this year, this is for the Nebula Awards that Little Brother is nominated for. I found, I think, probably the best potential second to go and accept the award on my behalf should I win, which is my friend Will Wheaton, who's just, the coolest geek I know. So it's going to be really cool. If you happen to be in LA near UCLA and you want to attend the Nebulas banquet, you can find more information at sfwa.org. It is open to the public, although it's not cheap. And you can attend and potentially even hear Will accept the Nebula Award on my behalf for Little Brother. Anyway, that's enough good news. On to the show. A little bit more from my 2005 novel, Someone Comes to Town, Someone Leaves Town. The next day was Saturday, and Marcy arranged to meet him at the cave mouth. In the lee of the wind, the bright winter sun reflected enough heat off the snow that some of it melted away, revealing the stunted winter grass beneath. They sat on the dry snow and listened to the wind whistle through the pines and the hiss of loose snow blowing across the crust. "Well, I get to meet your da, then," she said, after they'd watched a jackrabbit hop up the mountainside and disappear into the woods. He sniffed deeply and smelled the coal-face smell of his father's cogitation. "You want to?" he said. "I do." And so he led her inside the mountain, through the winter cave, and back and back to the pool in the mountain's heart. They crept along quietly, her fingers twined in his. "You have to put out the flashlight now," he said. "It'll scare the goblin." His voice shocked him and her, and he felt her startle. It was so quiet otherwise, just the sounds of breathing and of cave winds. So she let the whirring dynamo and the flashlight wind down, and the darkness descended on them. It was cool but not cold, and the wind smelled more strongly of coal-face than ever. "He's in there," Alan said. He heard the goblin scamper away. His words echoed over the pool around the corner. "Come on." Her fingers were very cool. They walked in a slow, measured step, like the king and queen of Elfland going for a walk in the woods. He stopped them at the pool's edge. There was almost no light here, but Alan could make out the smooth surface of his father's pool. "Now what?" she whispered, the hissing of her words susurrating over the pool's surface. "We can only talk to him from the center," he whispered. "We have to wade in." "I can't go home with wet clothes," she whispered. "You don't wear clothes," he said. He let go of her hand and began to unzip his snowsuit. And so they stripped there on his father's shore. She was luminous in the dark, a pale girl shape picked out in the ripples of the pool, skinny with her arms crossed in front of her chest. Even though he knew she couldn't see him, he was self-conscious in his nudity, and he stepped into the pool as soon as he was naked. "Wait," she said, sounding panicked. "Don't leave me." So he held out his hand for her, and then, realizing that she couldn't see it, he stepped out of the pool and took her hand, brushing her small breast as he did so. He barely registered the contact, though she startled and nearly fell over. "Sorry," he said. "Come on." The water was cold, but once they were in it up to their shoulders, it warmed up, or they went numb. "Is it okay?" she whispered, and now that they were in the center of the cavern, the echoes crossed back and forth and took a long time to die out. "Listen," Andy said. "Just listen." And the echoes of his words died down, and the winds picked up, and then words emerged from the breeze. "Adam," his father sighed. Marcy jumped a foot out of the water, and her splashdown sent watery ripples rebounding off the cavern walls. Alan reached for her and draped his arm around her shoulders. She huddled against his chest, slick, cold, naked skin goose-pimpled against his ribs. She smelled wonderful, like a fox. It felt wonderful and solemn to stand there nude in the heart of his father and let his secrets spill away. Her breathing stilled again. "Alan," his father said. "We want to understand, Father," Alan whispered. "What am I?" It was the question he'd never asked. Now that he'd asked it, he felt like a fool. Surely his father knew, the mountain knew everything and stood forever. He could have found out any time he'd thought to ask. "I don't have the answer," his father said. "There may be no answer. You may never know." Adam let go of Marcy, let his arms fall to his sides. "No," he said. "No," he shouted again, and the stillness was broken. The wind blew cold and hard, and he didn't care. "No," he screamed, and Marcy grabbed him and put her hand over his mouth. His ears roared with echoes, and they did not die down, but rather built atop one another to a wall of noise that scared him. She was crying now, scared and open-mouthed sobs. She splashed him, and water went up his nose and stung his eyes. The wind was colder now, cold enough to hurt, and he took her hand and sloshed recklessly for the shore. He spun up the flashlight and handed it to her, then yanked his clothes over his wet skin, glaring at the pool while she did the same. In the winter cave, they met a golem. It stood like a statue, brick red with glowing eyes, beside Alan's mother, hands at its sides. Golems didn't venture to this side of his father very often, and almost never in daylight. Marcy caught him in the flashlight's beam as they entered the warm humidity of the cave, shivering in the gusting winds. She fumbled the flashlight, and Alan caught it before it hit the ground. "It's okay," he said. His chest was heaving from his tantrum, but the presence of the golem calmed him. You could say or do anything to a golem, and it couldn't strike back, couldn't answer back. The sons of the mountain that sheltered and birthed the golems owed nothing to them. He walked over to it and folded his arms. "What is it?" he said. The golem bent its head slightly and looked him in the eye. It was man-shaped, but baggier, muscles like frozen mud. An overhang of belly covered its smooth crotch like a kilt. Its chisel-shaped teeth clacked together as it limbered up its jaw. "Your father is sad," it said. Its voice was slow and grinding like an avalanche. "Our side grows cold." "I don't care," Alan said. "Fuck my father," he said. Behind him, perched atop their mother, Davy wittered a mean little laugh. "You shouldn't." Alan shoved the golem. It was like shoving a boulder. It didn't give at all. "You don't tell me what to do," he said. "You can't tell me what to do. I want to know what I am, how we're possible, and if you can't help, then you can leave now." The winds blew colder, smelling now of the golem's side of the mountain, of clay and the dry bones of their kills, which they arranged on the walls of their cavern. The golem stood stock still. "Does it understand?" Marcy asked. Davy snickered again. "It's not stupid," Alan said, calming a little. "It's slow. It thinks slowly and acts slowly, but it's not stupid." He paused for a moment. "It taught me to speak," he said. That did it. He began to cry, biting his lip to keep from making a sound, but the tears rolled down his cheeks and his shoulders shook. The flashlight's beam pinned him, and he wanted to run to his mother and hide behind her, wanted to escape the light. "Go," he said softly to the golem, touching its elbow. "It'll be all right." Slowly, gratingly, the golem turned and lumbered out of the cave, clumsy and ponderous. Marcy put her arm around him, and he buried his face in her skinny neck, the hot tears coursing down her collarbones. Davy came to him that night and pinned him in the light of the flashlight. He woke staring up into the bright bulb, shielding his eyes. He groped out for the light, but Darrell danced back out of reach, keeping the beam in his eyes. The air crackled with the angry grinding of its hand dynamo. He climbed out of bed naked and felt around on the floor. He had a geode there. He'd broken it and polished it by hand, and it was the size of a softball, the top smooth as glass, the underside rough as a coconut's hide. Wordless and swift, he wound up and threw the geode as hard as he could at where he judged Davy's head to be. There was a thud and a cry, and the light clattered to the ground, growing more dim as its dynamo whirred to a stop. Green blobs chased themselves across his vision, and he could only see Darren rolling on the ground by turning his head to one side and looking out of the corner of his eye. He groped toward Davy and smelled the blood. Leaning down, he found Davy's hand and followed it up to his shoulder, his neck slick with blood, higher to Davy's face, his forehead, the dent there sanded, ragged by the rough side of the geode. The blood flowed freely, and beneath his other hand Danny's chest heaved as he breathed, shallowly, rapidly, almost panting. His vision was coming back now. He took off his t-shirt and wadded it up, pressed it to Davy's forehead. They'd done first aid in class. You weren't supposed to move someone with a head injury. He pressed down with the t-shirt, trying to staunch the blood. Then, quick as a whip, Davy's head twisted around, and he bit down hard on Alan's thumb tip. Alan reeled back, but it was too late. Davy had bitten off the tip of his right thumb. Alan howled, waking up Ed, Fred, Jeff, who began to cry. Davy rolled away, scampering back into the cave's depths. Alan danced around the cave, hand clamped between his thighs, mewling. He fell to the floor and squeezed his legs together, then slowly brought his hand up before his face. The ragged stump of his thumb was softly splurting blood in time with his heartbeat. He struggled to remember his first aid. He wrapped his t-shirt around the wound, then pulled his parka on over his bare chest and jammed his bare feet into his boots, then made his way to the cave mouth and scooped up snow under the moon's glow, awkwardly packing a snowball around his hand. He shivered as he made his way back into the winter cave and propped himself up against his mother, holding his hurt hand over his head. The winter cave grew cold as the ice packed around his hand. Bobby, woken by his clairvoyant instincts, crept forward with a sheet and draped it over Alan. He'd foreseen this, of course, had foreseen all of it, but Bobby followed his own code and kept his own counsel, cleaning up after the disasters he was powerless to prevent. Deep in the mountain, they heard the echoes of Davy's tittering laughter. "It was wrong to bring her here," Billy said to him in the morning, as he fed Alan the crusts of bread and dried apples he'd brought him, packing his hand with fresh snow. "I didn't bring her here. She followed me," Adam said. His arm ached from holding it aloft, and his back and tailbone were numb with the ache of a night spent sitting against their mother's side. And besides, why should it be wrong? Whose rules? What rules? What are the fucking rules? "You can feel the rules, brother," he said. He couldn't look Alan in the eye. He never did. This was a major speech coming from Bobby. "I can't feel any rules," Alan said. He wondered if it was true. He'd never told anyone about the family before. Had he known all along that he shouldn't do this? "I can. She can't know. No one can know. Even we can't know. We'll never understand it." "Where is Davy?" "He's doing a ritual with your thumb." They sat silent and strained their ears to hear the winds and the distant shuffle of the denizens of the mountain. Alan shifted, using his good hand to prop himself up, looking for a comfortable position. He brought his injured hand down to his lap and unwrapped his blood-soaked t-shirt from his fist, gently peeling it away from the glue of dried blood that held it there. His hand had shriveled in the night, from ice and from restricted circulation, and maybe from Davy's ritual. Alan pondered its crusty, clawed form, thinking that it looked like it belonged to someone, something else. Buddy scaled the stalactite that served as the ladder up to the lofty nook where he slept, and then came back down holding his water bottle. "It's clean. It's from the pool," he said. Another major speech for him. He also had an armload of scavenged diapers, much washed and worn as soft as flannel. He wet one and began to wipe away the crust of blood on Alan's hand and arm, working his way up from the elbow, then tackling the uninjured fingers, then, very gently, gently as a feather touch, slow as a glacier, he worked on Alan's thumb. When he was done, Alan's hand was clean and dry and cold, and the wound of his thumb was exposed and naked, a thin crust of blood weeping liquid slowly. It seemed to Alan that he could see the stump of bone protruding from the wound. He was amazed to see his bones, to get a look at a cross-section of himself. He wondered if he could count the rings and find out how old he was, as he had never been really certain on that score. He giggled ghoulishly. He held out his good hand. "Get me up, okay?" Bobby hauled him to his feet. "Get me some warm clothes, too." And he did, because he was Bobby, and he was always only too glad to help, only too glad to do what service he could for you, even if he would never do you the one service that would benefit you the most, telling you of his visions, helping you avoid the disasters that loomed on your horizon. Standing up, walking around, being clean, he began to feel like himself again. He even managed to get into his snow pants and parka and struggle out to the hillside and the bright sunshine where he could get a good look at his hand. What he had taken for a bone wasn't. It was a skinny little thumb tip, growing out of the raggedy, crusty stump. He could see the whorl of a fingerprint there, and narrow, nearly invisible cuticles. He touched the tip of his tongue to it, and it seemed to him that he could feel a tongue rasping over the top of his missing thumb tip. All right then. Either talk to you next week from San Francisco or in 2 weeks. See ya.